generic and these sorts of things. And I think that on the YouTube channel, like I talk a lot about fundamentals of storytelling, but I've tried to do so in a very practical way that is actually beneficial. So I think that my mic is falling on me. I think that my time in film school and my time studying writing and reading different screenwriting books and all this sort of stuff, I felt like there was a lot lacking. Like I felt like there wasn't a lot that was very clear on sort of how to actually sit down and write and apply some of these concepts. And so on my channel, I think I've talked a lot about these sort of fundamentals and how to build these fundamentals so that you can actually take something away from it as a writer and actually write. And so, for me, I'm very early in my, goals as a screenwriter and these sorts of things. Right now I'm working on rewrites for a production company here in Los Angeles. I'm trying to get a script sold to them right now that they're very interested in. And, so I'm very, very new in my understanding of writing and in my time as a screenwriter and somebody who likes screenwriting and believes in screenwriting. But what I felt was that there was a lot of things that were not being talked about specifically. Like this is why I talk constantly about philosophical conflict, because I think it's the most important element of a story, and I think it's very, very, very rarely ever actually spoken about in film school, like clearly, or in books clearly, and actually understanding that great story, like the reason that great stories work at the most fundamental level is their understanding of philosophical conflict, which essentially is beliefs that characters hold, and then different characters hold differing beliefs, and then those beliefs come into conflict. And actually understanding that is what drives your narrative structure, that is what drives so much about how your story works. I think this is something that I have been frustrated a lot when people talk about formulaic movies. I think people talk a lot about, the Marvel movies are bad because they're formulaic or this and that. And the Marvel movies aren't, they're mediocre movies, but the reason that they're not these like beautiful, great pieces of literary work is not because they're formulaic. The reason that they are, mediocre is because they aren't dealing with any real philosophical conflict on a more mature level, right? So when you are young, when you're a kid, you're first learning about stories, you're watching cartoons, you're reading bedtime stories, these sorts of things, right? You're listening to the story about the knight who goes off and kills the dragon, right? These stories are about being courageous in the face of danger and, going out, getting what you want. Very simple concepts, right? And these are great for us, like when we're young, these are great because they give us this sort of baseline understanding of how the world works and how we're supposed to operate inside the world. And that's the point of storytelling. The point of storytelling is not to just be entertaining. Like that's an offshoot of storytelling. But the real point of storytelling, the reason it exists as like an element of human psyche is because it gives us examples of people figuring out how to operate in the world. And when we align with a story, when we align with the story's belief systems that they're trying to portray, then that story aligns with us and we can use that story to better our lives, to be courageous and fight our own dragons and these sorts of things. But when we end up getting older, usually we end up needing to have more complex philosophical conflicts and more, gray or more nuanced philosophical conflicts. This is why stories like Sicario, I think, work, is because Sicario is working with this nuance where there's not just good and bad, there's the, how do you actually act? Are there ways that you can act that are bad even if you're fighting for good? And what is good and what is, and even down to like, it's sometimes not even about stopping criminals, but about controlling them and just being aware of what's going on and these sorts of things. And so you can get these more interesting philosophical conflicts in these more sort of mature or adult stories, whatever you want to call them. And that is the point of storytelling. And as you grow up, like these like great literary works throughout history, books, novels, these sorts of things have dealt with complex philosophical conflicts. And so if you refer these back to films like the Marvel films, a lot of them are just not dealing with conflicts that are interesting to a mind that is more philosophically mature. So, and it's not that they're not fun watches, it's that like the reason that you have these like, you know, scarf wearing, thick rimmed glasses film school guys talking about like, oh, that movie is so formulaic, I shall watch my A24 film to find true philosophy, or whatever they say. Like, the reason they're actually ignorant as to how stories work and what the point of stories is. The Marvel movies are not bad because they're formulaic. Structure is integral to good storytelling. And the reason that a lot of A24 movies are bad is because they lack any sort of narrative structure whatsoever. I don't hate all A24 movies. There's a lot of them I like, and I'm not bashing A24 necessarily. But I'm talking about that style of filmmaking, this sort of indie type of filmmaking where it's just all about like the feeling and spontaneity and this and that. And like the reality is that these are not deeper because you can't understand them. Honestly, like if you can't it is my belief that if you cannot understand a story, if you cannot understand a screenplay, a movie, a novel, a film, short, whatever it is, then in some way the writer may have failed, or the storyteller may have failed, because it's not about being oddly ambiguous and these sorts of things. The idea is to actually take clear philosophical conflicts that are complex and interesting to a mature mind, and then correctly, with good structure, put those into a story. And that is extremely difficult to do, and this is why so many people go to one of two extremes. They make movies that are very black and white. These are the good guys, these are the bad guys, good guys win, we go home, it was a fun story, it had cool CGI. And you go to the other side where it's just like complete chaotic nonsense, where nothing really makes any sense. There is no narrative structure, there is no real philosophical beliefs behind the story, and you just have these hodgepodges of stories that, 19-year-old film school guys like to say that we're so deep and they got it and you didn't, and you're just stupid because they didn't get it. If you ever watch a movie and you don't get it, you're probably not the stupid one. Like, just use that as a metric. And if you're watching a movie with people and you can't get what this weird movie is telling you, and then someone else is like, oh, see how deep that was? Think that they're probably lying to you because they don't actually get how stories work. And so this is the issue that I've found all over YouTube and screenwriting books and film school and all of this different stuff, is that nobody understands how to actually incorporate philosophical conflict, incorporate beliefs, and these sorts of things onto characters, which then creates the character conflict, and then into the narrative structure, which then creates the narrative structure of the story. And I think when you can actually get this done, that's how you can have stories that are actually great and fascinating. One story that I absolutely recommend you could watch, actually in a video I'm working on right now, I'm talking about this movie, is Wind River. The script was written, it was written and directed by Taylor Sheridan. And it is an extremely simple plot. It is not that complicated, but he focuses heavily on the characters, and he focuses heavily on what the characters believe. And this is what makes the film really, really strong. And he's also the same guy who wrote Sicario. So this guy, he's pretty good at writing actual philosophical conflict. And so, no, okay. So you're saying mixing purposefully scrambled? No. It's not about purposefully scrambled story structure. It's not. The issue happens is where these writers don't have a clear grasp on what they're trying to say in a story, but they know they want to have a unique story structure. And so it ends up creating these stories that are not strong at their core, thematically, philosophically, these sorts of things. And so that is what I encourage you to focus on. I don't encourage people to go out of their way to break like structural rules or principles, because these things are very superficial. They're not the deep core of your story. And this is why, let's see. No, Inception was very easy to understand. I don't understand. How do people not get Inception? The film was very, very simple. Let's see. Let me pull this up real quick. One moment. So I'll get to the next script in just a second, but let me show you this real quick. This is why I've talked about this sort of stuff inside the practical screenwriting course, which on September 9th, quick plug, doing a sale. Actually, you can see it right over here on the, right here. I'm doing a sale for the course on September 9th for a year anniversary. And I talk about these rewriting ideas in here, about starting with the core elements of your story, which is the philosophical stakes, and then moving upwards from that into your characters, into your structure, and these sorts of things. So